So in the state of the job market, I know whatever I'm going to say is going to sound self-serving, but it's.
Everybody, it's CJ with getcracked.io, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Vivek, the CEO of HackerRank.
I'm Vivek. I'm one of the founders and CEO of HackerRank. You're very, very popular inside our company.
Oh,
After
good to know.
you reviewed I think it was a support article that we wrote on how to hire next-gen developers, which you reviewed. And I'm so glad that we're getting to do this. So thank you for inviting me to the pod.
Everybody's familiar with those like leet code style questions that they get in a HackerRank. So walk me through what that landscape was like and how it's evolving.
The way interview process used to work was we literally used to write code on paper. Right? I got my job at Amazon. The Amazon was the job that I got out of college. The interviewer was on the phone. I was on the phone. I had to write code on paper, hash include IOStream using namespace, std, int main, and like read out. And then think about it. This was almost like fax or like maybe even like old school techniques. And then you'd say, hey, what was the thing that you wrote after this particular function? Can you? And we had to exchange this, and was felt very archaic. That's not the way that you code. That's not the way that you actually learn to code. So there were like two sort of like profound moments of how much GPA played a very critical role in somebody getting a job and how archaic the process was. That was like the real inspiration. And now to your question of like how it has shifted, I think people are starting to realize more and more that GPAs and pedigree and things are not necessarily the best proxy for skill. And that goes back to our core ethos of skill over pedigree. And the interview process is starting to become more and more real world. Well, now we can get into the lead code black hole. That's always like an interesting topic to get into. But at least like people are no longer writing code on a piece of paper. We're starting to have much more interactive IDEs. You're able to run code, and it's relevant to what you're going to do in the day-to-day job. So those are like two big shifts of companies focusing on skills as well as the interview process mirroring what you would do in a real world job, in your day-to-day job.
This video is sponsored by me. I built this platform called getcracked.io because I noticed that there was a massive skill gap, especially in the world of quantitative trading and higher echelon interviews, between what candidates know and what they need to know. This isn't only focused on data structures and algorithms. I cover a lot of different topics here like concurrency, operating systems, computer architecture, etc. Here we have skill-up questions and real-world interview questions that focus on practical concepts as opposed to contrived toy puzzles. We also have real coding questions with explanations in case you're stuck in both languages like Python and C++. Make sure to check it out. I guess I'm speaking a bit for self-taught developers as one. We always want people to judge us based off what we know rather than, what piece of paper that we hold. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, especially when I interview candidates, I notice that, they have these fancy four-year degrees, but when I ask them basic questions, they kind of collapse under pressure. So it's great to see that you guys came from that perspective to say, hey, we want to see what you can do and what you know as opposed to what somebody says that you know.
Exactly.
That's really cool. So let's kind of like fast forward to today. Post the start of HackerRank, now the company's established, and now you're kind of using lead code questions as a proxy. Now, maybe not today as much, but I guess that was kind of the initial proxy that you mentioned what was a start. Do you think, fast forwarding to today, that's a good indicator for hiring candidates still, and why or why not?
So I'll answer your question in two parts. One is what I believe, and I will also talk about what I'm observing in the market. So the first part of what I believe, maybe we can start with like, why is there frustration among candidates or Reddit forums on this lead code? Lead code doesn't have the greatest brand. Nobody really enjoys like going to lead code, but it's almost like a forced thing that you need to do. I think there are two reasons for that. One is just like the 747 golf balls and 747 questions. I think there is a notion among developers that whatever I'm being tested on is not what I'm going to be working on in my day job. I think that is one factor that contributes to that. The second is it's almost like the more senior that you get, the interview process, at least for like 50% of your interview process, 70% of your interview process, isn't that different from somebody who just like graduated out of college.
Right.
That is also feels a little bit offending. Hey, I've spent 8 years on this. Why are you asking me to find the longest common subsequence within these two
Right.
strings. That doesn't make any sense. And you just like asked that to the new grad student last week when you went on a campus recruiting. So I think those are like usually the two reasons. It doesn't really mirror the job, and why is it agnostic of seniority? So my stance on it, and then I'll talk about my observation, is I think it's very important to know the fundamentals of computer science, regardless of whatever level of abstraction that we're going to get. And AI is going to build a whole new level of abstraction. Yes, you're not going to write merge sort. Yes, there are like APIs to help you do the sorting. Yes, you're not going to like actually interact with like a heap data structure or a binary tree and all of those things. But it's important for you to know what is the complexity of the code when you actually take a look at it. Is it O of n or is it O of n squared? Like, how do you actually optimize that? It's important to know. It's important to
Yeah.
know, are you using the right kind of data structures to make this happen? It is important to know, given a code, how do you actually optimize to make this better? But I do think we've taken the lead code thing to an extreme by
Mm.
figuring out, like, by asking people to learn about like esoteric data structures and algorithms and things in this line. So my view is, whether you want to call it lead code questions or whatever, like it's up to you. But we call it as fundamentals of software engineering, and you do need to have a good understanding of that. Cyclomatic complexity, how do you actually format your code, everything from like how do you name your function signature, from the variable names and all of those things. Those are all like just like good fundamentals for
Yeah.
you to have, agnostic of seniority. that's
Yeah.
that's my viewpoint. What I'm observing, I would say, about and it's continuing to increase, about like right now a third of the assessments or interviews that we do are now more and more towards project slash code repo style questions. We can talk about the AI assistant. That is not a third. That's probably a subset of the third. We can talk about it. But like a third of the assessments and interviews are moving more and more towards that. So if I had to like prognosticate what's going to happen, I think it would go something like this: golf balls in a 747 to lead code slash algorithmic questions to projects to real world tasks in code repos. And then it would actually go beyond code repos as well, which is which would be the perfect mirror of what you do in a day-to-day job, where somebody's saying like, hey, the prod is down. What do? You go to your console, you see what's going on, you come to the IDE, you make some changes, you push. That goes beyond even the IDE stuff. So I think we're going to start to move more and more in a direction where your interview process is almost indistinguishable from what you do in your daily job.
Yeah, and to me personally, that's a more ideal interview process because yes, data structures and algorithms is part of the fundamentals of computer science, but there's the fundamentals encompasses so much more than that.
Yeah.
Encompasses networking, operating systems, maybe computer architecture in some version or another. It also encompasses debugging, as you mentioned, like prod
Yeah.
is down. What do you do? Right? Debugging is a very important skill that not a lot of candidates train for, but is being asked progressively more and more in interviews. I've also interviewed these past couple of months. I started a new position recently, but during those interviews, I've been noticing progressively more companies saying, here's a take home assignment, build this for us. Now,
Yep.
it isn't do this work for us and we're just going to copy your work. It's here's a small project of something you should be able to do on the job in a given, time constraint, whether that's a week or 2 hours. We want you to build it for us. And to me, that's a much better and more holistic way to evaluate a candidate than Coco's Bananas or Twosome. So I definitely see what you're saying, and I think that's the direction. And I'm seeing that as a direction a lot of companies are moving towards. When you say that a third of the evaluations are more so that project-based evaluation, are you seeing that landscape shift more in big tech, quantitative trading firms, Fortune 500, startups? Who's embracing that change?
Uh, it started. So the way that we think about our customers, again, there's a very rough approximation. We think about them broadly in three categories. The first category is tech first organizations. These are all the companies that started with tech as its core, whether it's Amazon or Airbnb, all Google, all of the different organizations. The second category is tech forward, which is companies that did not start as a tech organization, but are increasingly becoming more and more tech. This includes everything from the financial services, all of the different banks that we work with, all of the different traditional e-commerce companies who are like becoming like tech. So that's the second category. The
Yep.
third category is services organizations. This includes all of the consulting services companies that we work with, whether it's BCG or Accenture or HCL or like large scale organizations. So these are, again, this is like a very rough approximation in terms of the labels that we have on tech first, tech forward, and consulting services or professional services organizations. You'd be surprised. Well, I don't know if you're going to be surprised or not, but um, the the initial momentum of pushing more and more towards a project type or real world type questions came a lot from the professional services organizations.
Hmm.
That they were actually the first mover. Maybe I'll go on a quick tangent and come back to this. In fact, they are still the first mover on pushing more to assess for the Gen AI skills to the new kind of AI skills as well, more than the tech first and tech forward. So right now, if I had to think about of the third, what is the distribution among like adoption rates of tech first, tech forward, and professional services? Obviously, the number of professional services organizations that we work is way less compared to the tech first and tech forward. That's also just like from a good representation of the universe of companies. But I would say it started with like the professional services organizations, followed by tech first, and followed by tech forward. And now I would say it's pretty good distribution across these three categories on the third.
Awesome. Okay. Now, you also mentioned AI and how AI is going to potentially change the interview process. We're seeing companies utilizing AI for cheating, and we'll get to that later on. And we're seeing companies embracing AI for programming and testing candidate skills relative to how well they can use AI. How is AI disrupting interviewing in your perspective?
My belief is the more the level of abstraction that you're going to be working on, the stronger you need to be in the fundamentals of how this is all built,
Yeah.
which might seem counterintuitive with of like why do I need to know the level one of the stack when I'm only going to operate in level n? Uh, but what I've found is, and by the way, this is not just like true in programming or development or software development or anything. Even when you're going to interview, whether it's a sales exec or a marketing person or so, you can easily understand whether somebody is an expert not by all of the jazzy words and things that they use, but in their ability to just speak plainly and
Mhm.
their depth of understanding the fundamentals of why something matters.
Yeah.
Um, and I've noticed in all of the interviews that I do, predominantly with execs or senior people, and this is like agnostic of the profession, of the stronger your understanding of fundamentals and the more plain you're able to speak, the bigger of an expert you are. So I actually think as more and more as people use AI more and more, at least in the interview process, you're going to start to have an increased emphasis on fundamentals.
Mhm.
Now, does that mean that you're going to like continue the path of like even a worse lead code path? Probably not. Like we mentioned, I think fundamentals of software engineering and lead code are used interchangeably, but there is still a difference. But I think the more AI is going to come into the workplace, which has already come, and the more AI is going to come into hiring, the more you're going to be assessed and evaluated on your fundamentals. So that's probably my sort of like the first prediction or like things that I'm observing.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to AI, um, here is what we are observing. There are two workflows that people use with AI today. One workflow is, and this is in your actual software development. One workflow is you're asking the agent to do something, or even like multiple agents, and it's going to do a bunch of things and it's going to give you a pull request for you to review. So that's like using AI as an agent.
Mhm.
The second workflow is AI as a co-pilot. You're actually pair programming, you are discussing, brainstorming, working with AI as a copilot. So on the first one, the critical part is how effectively you're prompting and how effectively you're reviewing. I think Balaji Srinivasan says it really well. Like AI will do the middle to middle, and humans will be the bookend of like prompting and verifying. So one type of questions or things that we're starting to see increasing more in the hiring process is your ability to go ahead and review code. So we actually have a new question type called code review, where we used agents on real world code repositories to do a task, to submit a pull request. We made some subtle errors. Now the candidate has to go ahead and like review the code and add comments, just like how you would review a pull request from your peer programmer. The second type that we're seeing is I'm going to have a code repository. I'm going to give you a task that you're going to do in a real world scenario, re-architect the system or build a feature and things in those lines. And I'm going to have an AI assistant next to you. Go ahead and build this. I know I'm going on a monologue. I'll just like say one more thing and I'll pause and we can
Okay.
move forward. One of the interesting things that we've observed is, hey, how do you actually differentiate between a vibe coder and a production engineer? I'm probably like giving away secrets here, but that's okay. In an AI assisted sort of setup, we found that like a vibe coder usually just types a very vague prompt, hey, go and solve this. And then it does something and you just like copy paste or you just like accept, accept, accept.
Right.
Whereas like a real production engineer is going to have a much more thoughtful prompt, is not going to accept all of the suggestions, is going to do a combination of sort of like hand coding certain parts and using AI. So we're also able to even discern patterns based upon how they interact with AI in terms of how strong of a production engineer you are versus a vibe coder. So zooming out, synthesize all of it. I think you're going to start to see increased emphasis on fundamentals. You're going to start to see more and more of code review, and you're going to start to see an AI assisted sort of interviewing, which is going to discern, which is also going to help you discern whether you're a vibe coder or a production engineer, depending upon like how you interact with the AI assistant. That's what we're seeing in the market. That's what we're working with customers, and it's a very exciting problem to be working on.
Now let's kind of turn the page. Staying on AI though, I want to talk about the downsides of AI, which is the cheating and the copy and paste per se without a care to what it's doing or how it's doing it, and kind of just utilizing AI as a means to an end, as opposed to understanding how to leverage it to make you a better, more productive developer. So walk me through how platforms like HackerRank are able to prevent cheating or the use of AI tools to get through, but not necessarily to understand what you're getting through. If that
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
absolutely. So I've done like a pseudo PhD on integrity over the years, so I'll be able to tell you all of the things that people do. So let's maybe bucket. So there are three buckets. There are three things that we have. There are three categories where what we see of why break of things that break the integrity of the hiring process. The first one is when you leak questions on the web. So you leak questions. People have already seen the question, so that's not a fair way of assessing or evaluating your skill set. The second is you're using all of the AI, all of the tools that are not authorized. This is all the Cluely, Interview Coder, Ultra Code, sometimes even ChatGPT when it's explicitly not allowed for you to go ahead and use it. So that's the second one, usage of tools. The third one is impersonation, which is asking my friend or like me asking you to take the test on my behalf. So these are the three categories that we see. And when I'll walk you through how we are preventing or we're pushing the boundaries across all of them. On the first one, in terms of question lead, maybe this is like a trivia. Do you know which site gets the maximum number of lead questions from HackerRank?
Which site gets the most leaked questions from HackerRank? Ooh, is it LeetCode?
You might think it's lead code. It's actually check. um,
Okay.
yeah, the student community, there's a lot there. So Chegg forums is
Say that
uh,
again. What's it called?
Chegg, Chegg.
CHEGG Chegg. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not part of these communities, so I've never heard of that Chegg. Okay.
it's very funny. Yeah, Chegg is right up there. and yeah, you think it's leak code where it gets leaked. So anyway, the first thing that we do is we actually scrape the internet. The internet is probably a too generous of a use, but like we scrape a lot of different sites, a lot of different forums, sometimes even like GitHub repositories where it gets pushed. And we take this very seriously. We send them a DMCA. Most of them actually cooperate with us. They take this down. And sometimes when they do not, we actually mark the question as leaked and we replace it with an equivalent question. So we take this very, very seriously. We have honed the process. There's only so much you can do in preventing leaking. You can
Right.
still take like a screenshot. Even we have some watermark and things in those lines, which is sort of working. I would say like it's working 50-50. And I say 50-50 because they're like people who still like leak with their own email address that's actually present there, which sounds like yeah, it sounds pretty crazy. So that's one on the question leaking. The second one is when you actually are going to use AI tools and others. So
Mm-hmm.
we introduced this new thing called as proctor mode, and now we have actually done like close to, I'd say like 200 to 300,000 candidates over the last like 2 months or so who have actually gone onto this proctor mode. Proctor mode is a new innovation from us. We took inspiration from the physical proctor. So what we said was, okay, if money and logistics weren't a constraint, what would our customers do? Well, they would actually hire a proctor who would sit in front of the candidate and make sure that it's actually done in a fair way. Okay, now with AI, that is possible to replicate. So what does a proctor do? Well, the proctor sets the instruction. The proctor intervenes when you are going to do something that's out of the rules. And then the proctor actually gives you a summary saying like, hey, this is what I observed. And now you can actually take action based on my observation. So we actually recreated that physical proctor into an AI proctor, which is called as proctor mode, that does something very, very similar. So it sets the instruction, it goes and hides at the top left. And then if you're going to do anything that's going to violate the rules, for example, you're going to open up a new tab and go to Claude and search for the answer. And so one is it will give you a warning, hey, why are you doing this? And second, we'll also be able to take screenshots of whatever you've been doing where we will analyze. And the goal for us is to make sure that sometimes you're genuinely looking for an answer, or maybe genuinely looking for an answer that doesn't make any sense. Sometimes you're genuinely looking for syntax help and things on those lines, but sometimes you have some nefarious use of just getting
Right.
an answer from an AI assistant. So we do screenshot analysis, and we push super hard to prevent you from making this happen. And then the
Mm-hmm.
third one, and then we do all of the analysis. So our analysis, uh, we have various types of analysis that we do. We analyze your screenshots, we analyze your coding patterns. By the way, we've actually found that like when people actually use any of these AI tools, authorized or unauthorized tools and stuff, you can see how the coding patterns matter a lot in terms
Yeah.
of like how they work on. So you can actually see a lot from coding patterns, screenshot analysis, what you're doing, and all of those things. So that's the proctor mode aspect. And the third one is impersonation. We do a lot. Again, like the proctor mode also asks you to turn on your webcam, and during the session, we make sure that if there are like multiple people in the frame, or if there's like a slightly different person in the frame, we're able to detect all of these things. So, what? And maybe I'll just like share a couple of things to work on, and then we can pause here to dig deep on any of the aspects.
Sure.
We work incredibly, incredibly hard to make sure that we do a really good balance on ensuring super high developer experience balanced with trust in the process. Some of these things may sound very intrusive, but we've taken deep care in making sure that these are not going to bother for people who are just who are following the rules and taking in a very and who are attempting the test in a genuine way. So
Yeah.
we've taken a lot of care in building all of these, and a universal thing that we have on top of all of this is because we have an AI assistant in our IDE ourselves. It's almost like, hey guys, like I have an AI assistant. You should just ask the AI assistant. So there's no reason for you to go outside your browser tab or so.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives us more confidence that even after you have an AI assistant, you're still doing these things, then like something is off. So
Yeah,
those are the three categories, and like we work incredibly hard, and I think we are continuing to push the boundary on having a fair hiring process.
I see. That's good to hear. And at the same time, I think it's not only your responsibility to detect cheating because an interview process should be a multi-stage process where maybe the first part of it might be the HackerRank interview. But I know speaking from personal experience, what I would do when I was interviewing candidates is after they've done the online assessment, they might have a round with me. And my
Yeah,
round will simply be going over their online assessment and asking them questions. Why'd you do this on the fifth line? Why'd you do that? And it becomes very obvious at that point from the company's perspective when somebody's been using these nefarious tools or cheating through the
yeah,
process. Why? Because they can't explain it, or they have a difficulty explaining it, or they're looking around their 30 monitors and typing out prompts to explain it for them. So
yeah, yeah.
I think what you're doing is great in terms of effort to prevent cheating. But I also think it's the responsibility of companies to screen cheaters, whether that's a whiteboard interview or explain what you did here in this online
True.
assessment. Let's kind of zoom out a little from the assessments themselves and talk about more in general the job market. So I think one of the biggest complaints that I've been seeing when I'm speaking to students, speaking to candidates, just in general being online is within the first 3 hours of a job being posted online, there's over 1,000 applicants,
Yeah.
right? And it's extremely difficult for candidates to stand out. And it's probably equally as difficult for employers to filter those candidates. So how are employers, I mean, you're probably very close to them, you have their ear. How are they filtering candidates when they have this opening with 1,000 plus applicants? Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Maybe I think there are two parts here. One is like the state of job market, and the second is how companies are trying to filter. So in the state of the job market, there is a lot of hype going on of developer doomsday, don't study computer science. I know whatever I'm going to say is going to sound self-serving, but it's way more exaggerated than what we're seeing in the market. So maybe I'll try to paint a better picture on this. Let's say the job market index was at 100 in the pre-COVID levels. Let's say on
Mhm.
March 2020 it was 100. I think it reached a peak of about 250 sometime in 2022. So it was 2.5x.
Sure.
Right now, and it declined pretty rapidly in mid 2022, 2023, even like good part of 2024, and is now probably at 80-ish.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's not yet at the pre-COVID level. It's not yet at the peak, but it is flattening and is starting to rise up and tick back up slowly.
Mm.
I actually expect for us to get back to the pre-COVID levels maybe in Q1 of 2026. Okay,
Okay.
whether we're going to get to the peak, I don't know, but like actually expect for us to get back to that. So that's on the overall job. Now let's actually dig into the types of job and seniority. From a types of job perspective, again, it may seem obvious, but people are the job market for AI researchers, AI engineer, which by the way, a term nobody really knows what it means. Like, everybody's just like making up their own definition of this. But so anything on AI engineers, AI researchers, and application developers who have much more of these Gen AI skills, that's on a very steep slope. The traditional, hey, I'm just going to hire a front end developer who knows React, but is not very proficient in all of the other AI, Gen AI skills, that's declining, or people are not even like working towards it.
Mm.
So that is one aspect of the job category of what is having a steeper slope. The second one is seniority. New grads have absolutely been impacted relative to the mid to senior hires. There are more larger, the big tech companies and startups have significantly shifted their view, at least for a good portion of 2025, to mid to senior people than new grads.
Mm.
But I'm the torchbearer of new grads, I guess, or maybe the torchbearer of developers and stuff. I'm coming with good news. We're starting to see a shift. People are realizing, customers are realizing that, by the way, there are there was this whole thing about, oh, AI can actually write code. That's what all of the new grads and junior developers do. So why do we need new grads and junior developers?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that you still need a human in the loop, and you still need to, and so that is one, you still need a human in the loop. And secondly, companies are realizing that in order for you to change the culture of your organization to become much more AI native or AI first, you need to infuse talent who are AI native. In fact, like it's very, very hard to push your senior people to go ahead and become AI first than like the junior person who comes in and says, yeah, I can do it in like 2 days. And why did you give me an estimate for 2 weeks on this stuff? So people are realizing that you need human in the loop. And in order for you to become AI native, you need to AI first, you need to infuse people who are AI native. So these two things are causing a shift as well in companies hiring for new grads. I think Shopify's VP of engineering has come out very openly and said, like, look, I'm going to hire 1,000 interns. We're seeing that. We're seeing shift across the board in our university recruiting seasons that a lot of our customers do. So net, if I had to synthesize what's happening, the job market index is probably 20% lower than what it was even at the pre-COVID levels, nowhere close to a peak. It's starting to tick up, and I expect it to get to the pre-COVID levels probably in Q1 of 2026. The type of jobs that people are getting attracted to is on the research lab, it's AI researchers, AI engineers, and then on the traditional application developers is like the application developers with all of the Gen AI skills and the ability to use AI across your SDLC. The seniority shift has been much more lopsided towards mid to senior for a good part of the 2025, but it's starting to change. And I actually expect this to be much better in 2026. I'm not going to name names because I think I might get in trouble. But you see a lot of people saying, I'm going to reduce my hiring. I'm going to sort of change hiring, and I'm going to reduce my hiring. I don't need enough engineers and stuff. They're still hiring a lot of engineers. They're still hiring a lot of engineers, and it's needed because you do need to build. So that's what we're starting to see in the job market. You had a second part to your question, but we can
Yeah,
dive
and I'll
deeper
get
there.
there in a second. My second part was about filtering candidates. But
Yes.
before I get there, when I hear that you say, for example, that companies are hiring or companies are hiring AI native junior developers, my biggest fear is that a junior developer is going to hear this and think to themselves, well, I can just prompt my way through the 4 years of my computer science program. And because I can utilize AI in that way, I don't need to pay attention in my networking classes. I don't need to pay attention to my operating systems classes. I don't need to pay attention to my data structures and algorithms classes. What do you say to that?
I'm going to be using these two terms interchangeably: next gen developer and AI native. So here's how we define the next gen developer. They have 4 attributes. You're strong in fundamentals of software engineering. You can use AI across all aspects of the software development lifecycle: gathering requirements, designing systems, implementing, testing, deploying, and maintaining. You have knowledge of AI concepts. Every new technology comes with its own new set of concepts that you need to learn.
Right.
It's specific in AI. It's about prompt engineering, RAG, vector databases, MCP, and there are going to be new concepts that are going to come up. And fourth is, when you're building something, you build it with deep care. You have a taste of building good things, and you have good business acumen. This is how we define as a next gen developer, and so or AI native. And you're starting to see this. It's not like any junior developer who can prompt their way through is going to be considered as an AI native or an next gen.
Mhm.
The hiring process that we're seeing our customers put in to even hire junior or senior encompasses evaluating across all of these 4 attributes. And you would actually be surprised as to how much leverage there are some of the junior developers or new grads coming up have in terms of the ability to build with deep care and taste, because it's almost like their exposure to many tools and products that they use on a daily basis is completely changed. It's almost like chat has become like the main interface for many things that they actually use. And chat and voice and all of those things have sort of become like the standard interface. So that's what I mean by AI native, and those are the 4 attributes that our customers, that we see our customers are looking for.
Okay, that's an important clarification, so thank you for that. So I guess now moving on to the second part of the question was Susie Q from HR has 1,000 resumes within 2 hours of this job posting. How does she go through that, especially being a non-technical person herself, and make sure that she's selecting the right applicants? I know star developers that have never gotten interviews at companies I would have given them a chance, for example.
Yep. Um, Maybe I'll bucket into two things. One bucket that we see our customers doing is there's a workflow where it automatically triggers an assessment for you to go ahead and take.
Mm,
So that's like the extreme one, which is actually good. I'm not worried about your skill. I'm sorry, I'm not worried about your pedigree, your resume, your GPA. All I care about is your skill. Go ahead and take this assessment. So that's on the one end of the spectrum. Um, the other end of the spectrum is much more manual resume filtering and picking the ones who are right for you to go ahead and like invite to an assessment. And the resume filtering is very interesting. First, you need to weed out all of the folks who are North Korean agents who are applying to you. So that's one. A lot of fake resumes that actually come up. The second aspect of that is some people actually apply for a completely for a job that's very different from what you're qualified for. It's so off.
right.
Hey, you've applied. You should apply for an executive job. That's what you've been doing. Like why are you applying? And I don't know if it's because like there are like they use like AI tools that just like go auto apply to different places and things in this line. So that's the second order of filtering. The third aspect, which we see is okay, now I need to like use some filtering criteria, like are you new grad or you this particular senior, like how effectively do I have a match? You may get into some trouble with that. I think you might have seen the lawsuit from forgetting the name of the company, Hired Score, that was acquired by Workday, which actually gives a score of how close of a resume matches it to your job, and that it's not filtering appropriately, or it has some kind of bias towards a particular type of profiles and stuff like that. So you may get into a little bit of a trouble, but we do see some companies then like using some of these tools as well. Again, I have nothing against Hired Score and any of them, but just like saying that there's a lawsuit that's going on there. So
Sure.
you need to be careful in terms of how you use AI or filtering mechanisms there.
What are you noticing about candidates from employers that those candidates are lacking? What's kind of the top three, or maybe just the top skill that if you were to tell a junior developer to focus on this, it would be that?
That's a good question. I don't know
Is
if
it
I
a lack of fundamental understanding? Is it not being able to utilize Gen AI tools correctly? Is it maybe it's not even technical at all? Maybe people are just having a bad time in the behavioral interview round and they come off as unprepared or overly nervous. These things also count.
That's a good question. I mean, again, we work with such a wide cross section of companies across sizes, across geos. I don't know if there's like one common answer. So I'm trying to distill what is the common denominator. I will
Mm,
share something that may look counterintuitive, but I feel like it's important. People underestimate your communication skill, and when it comes to software development. Uh, so what does it mean to have? What does it mean to be a good communicator? And I think like people also sometimes conflate good communication skills with charisma and others. I don't mean like charisma. It's going to be hard for you to suddenly become charismatic overnight, but it's also hard for you to become good communicator overnight. But you can work on your communication skills and eventually become charismatic, I guess. I think the communication skill is the ability for you to convey whatever you have in your head in a clear, succinct way.
mm,
Um, and it's very important to build and hone that skill. A few ways of how you can build slash hone that skill. It is something that I've always viewed as very important, and I've continued to hone that skill. So I'm going to just like share some of the ways that it has worked for me.
sure.
You should write a lot. I write an email to the company every Sunday. It's called Sunday email, and today is a Sunday. This is going to be my 458th email
Wow.
that I've been writing pretty consistently across like many years. So what is it like? It's gonna come up on like 10 years, right? Like 52 weeks times 10, like so it's like 8.5, 9 years. I mean, writing. I think writing helps you to have a higher degree of clarity of thought because you can't fool in writing. You can
Mm.
say uhs and ums and just like get away when you're speaking, but you cannot fool when you're writing because every word matters. You should write well. You should have a explicit effort to improve your vocabulary. I think a strong vocabulary helps you to string things together in a succinct way,
Yeah.
whether that is phrases, idioms, or just like words that just like, yeah, expanding your vocabulary is pretty important and critical. And third is you should just like try to just put out things to the world, whether it's speaking, writing, whatever, whether it's a blog, whether it's going to be internal documents that you're going to be working on, or whether it's a presentation. You just need to like, this is the way to practice. It's like a stand-up comedian trying to do open mic night stand-ups, right? So it is one of those things where you just need to like put out your material, see how people react, and continue to hone yourself. So I think there needs to be a deliberate effort to improve your communication skills. And how I've done it, or I'm continuing to do, is write more, have a clear emphasis on improving my vocabulary, and just like putting out whatever I'm doing. This podcast is an example of that. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of good stuff, kudos, and I'm also going to get a lot of critique on this. And just put it out there and continue to hone.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's something that I tell people that watch me live stream or in my videos. Strong technical skills is just one out of like seven or more skills that
Yeah.
you need to have as a software engineer. Communications is a massive skill. Another thing, especially if you're in a leadership position, budgeting, right? Understanding time constraints, understanding the trade off between writing the best code that you can and the realistic expectations of we need to deliver something on time and on budget, right? All these things are conflicting. And some of them are harmonious, some of them are conflicting. But regardless, you're going to need to be more than just strong at data structures or strong at concurrency or strong technically. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I did say we're going to go into a speed round about social media. I have one more question for you before we do that. Now, zooming out just a little bit more, how do companies feel about candidates in general in the US market? Are they pleased with existing talent? Are they disappointed? Is it average, so-so? What are they telling you about the people that they're interviewing?
As much as like I mentioned, the job market index is 20% lower, even from the pre-COVID levels and things, it still feels like a fight for talent across companies.
Hmm.
It doesn't feel like a layup. Yes, there are a lot of people applying, but I guess like, really good, talented people are always going to be valuable. They're always going to be hard to compete. It's really interesting. The sentiment among customers in terms of the war for talent, or whatever you want to label that, has not changed at all over the years.
Hmm.
It's still hard. You still need to convince. I still need to showcase this is like a great company for you to work with. It's just it's still there.
That's good to hear, and that's reassuring, um, because that just means that companies are still willing to fight for solid candidates.
Yeah.
Um, and everybody is, when they're applying, they want to feel like I'm being fought for. Like they really want me, and you feel good as a candidate when that happens. Well, Vivek, I wanted to thank you for speaking to me, and thank you for reaching out to have this set up. It was great speaking to you. I'm sure people are really going to enjoy this.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate your questions and all of this, all of the inputs. Yeah, hopefully it was valuable for your community.
Very much so. Thank you.